Lolly. There's £1,000 to spend in your favourite supermarket and a festively themed GB News goodie bag, and we'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Yeah, well, obviously you can't, on the one hand, say that the government is forcing everybody to go to work an hour early and then say people are welcome to go to work an hour earlier if they want to. As you say, Tom, there's a collective action problem. You know, people go to work at certain times, they have office hours, and those office hours are based on what everybody believes the time to be. So the point here is not that anybody believes that daylight savings actually creates more daylight. It just creates a daylight when people can actually enjoy it, and people tend to want their leisure and recreation after work rather than before work. It also has daylight saving time various health and well-being benefits. The reason that it was introduced during the First World War is, in fact, it does allow a certain amount of extra efficiency. You need less electricity, for example, in the evenings. You don't need to have the floodlights on during an afternoon football game and all the rest of it. So for health and well-being reasons, I'm very much in favour not just of keeping daylight saving time, but having it all year round.
But also, in terms of safety for women as well, it's better for us to be walking home if it's lighter and things like that. You know what I mean? When it's really dark, it does get dark quite quickly towards the winter months. There's no problem. I mean, what is the real reason as to why this would be a problem, Peter, for the clocks to change anyway? I mean, that's fine, isn't it? We all get used to it, and then it comes back when the light sort of changes.
Well, collective madness is always a problem. When people do something stupid in very large numbers, it's worrying. I mean, I find it amusing now because it's obviously impossible to persuade people that this thing is as crazy as it is. You say things like, it's better for women to be able to walk down the street when it's light. Well, no doubt it is, but the street will remain as light or as dark as it would have been before, whether you fiddle with the clocks or whether you don't.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's 10 a.m. on Saturday, the 8th of November, live across the United Kingdom. This is Saturday Morning Live.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight.
The White House has accused the BBC of deliberate dishonesty, condemning the way a Panorama documentary edited a speech made by the US president.
So today we're asking, could the BBC's actions have an impact on the special relationship between Britain and the United States?
And residents in Crowborough plan to line up 600 people from the army barracks to visually represent the number of asylum seekers temporarily housed in local training camps.
This comes as the Home Secretary is set to announce a huge shake-up of the immigration system. Our reporter Jack Carson is on the ground in Crowborough.
Well, so many people are here. Hundreds have gathered outside the Crowborough training camp this morning. We're spilling onto both sides of the road. Here, signs say protect our children and protect our communities. We'll be speaking to some residents this hour.
And the Scottish Government is considering conducting a grooming gangs inquiry as GB News reveals that allegations that Police Scotland failed to investigate an abuse network in Glasgow.
And Girl Guiding is facing a legal challenge from a mother who's accused the charity of failing to follow Supreme Court rules on gender. GB News Health and Science editor Lucy Johnson will be here for us.
The biggest stories, boldest opinions and liveliest debates over the next 2 hours. I'm Olivia Utley.
And I'm Charlie Peters, and your weekend starts here.
Well, I'm really looking forward to talking to Jack on the ground in Crowborough this morning. The residents are absolutely furious about this plan to put migrants up in army barracks. The idea from the government is that it'll be less controversial to have them in army barracks than to have them in hotels. I wonder if that'll wash. Is there really much of a difference?
The one thing I think they can really win on this position is about security to some extent, Olivia, because, of course, if they're in a camp, there's less of that fear about dispersal. Because previously, as you know, with the hotels, moving people into HMOs, into accommodations in towns, that didn't settle anyone's concerns, really. If anything, it made them worse. So, you know, with fencing, with accommodation, with a secure military site, that could help, but clearly still real issues there as well.
And to what extent will they be kept in the base? Will we see legal complaints raised by migrants if they're forced to stay in the base? In Inverness as well, there are issues with the camp being actually right in the centre of the community. And of course, you've got the cost issue as well. Lots of the public are annoyed not only about the effect on local communities, but also the cost. And the cost of housing them in barracks, bizarrely, is higher than hotels. I don't think this is an easy win for the government at all.
Yeah, well, some of those barracks are pretty ancient. I mean, Cameron Barracks in Inverness, it's a Victorian piece of work. Quite a lot of visible plumbing on the inside, 20-man rooms as well, so I can see why it might be quite expensive to maintain that.
Fix it up, absolutely. Well, we want to hear from you about that and everything else that we're talking about today, so please send us your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/yoursay.
We have a very special return for you this morning, because before we do anything else, it's Sophia Wensler who has all your latest news headlines.
Charlie, Olivia, thank you. Good morning. It's just gone 10 o'clock. I'm Sophia Wensler, back with your headlines from the GB newsroom. Donald Trump is at war with the BBC as the White House accused the corporation of purposeful dishonesty over the bias row engulfing the broadcaster. It launched its attack over the way a Panorama documentary selectively edited a speech made by the president, branding it as 100% fake news.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight.
Speaking to The Telegraph, Donald Trump's press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, said British taxpayers are being forced to fund a leftist propaganda machine. Meanwhile, a BBC spokesperson told GB News, while we don't comment on leaked documents, when the BBC receives feedback, it takes it seriously and considers it carefully. Labour MPs are plotting to oust Sir Keir Starmer, it's being reported, as their anger grows about Number 10 and their plan to raise income tax. They have reportedly been meeting in a private MP's bar to discuss when and how to replace him. It's understood to be fuelled by despair about the party's poll ratings and discontent that the government may break Labour's manifesto promise. This is all despite the Prime Minister's recent efforts to engage more with his colleagues, even inviting rebellious backbenchers back into the fold. Elsewhere, the Chancellor is set to announce a stealth tax raid on retirement savings in her upcoming budget. Experts warn it would reduce the size of pension pots and cut net income. Residents in Crowborough will today line up 600 people up from the army barracks to demonstrate the number of asylum seekers being temporarily housed in training camps. Wealdon District Council called on the Home Office to reverse the plans, claiming it had totally failed to engage with their community or provide assurances around safeguarding. The Home Office said military sites are being considered with the aim of reducing the impact on communities and delivering better outcomes for taxpayers. Meanwhile, the UK could be set for a tougher Denmark-style immigration system, as the Home Secretary is reportedly set to announce a huge shake-up. It's understood Shabana Mahmood is considering plans to make it easier to remove arrivals from the UK, while also reducing the incentives for those seeking to move here. She has supposedly been inspired by the Danish immigration system, which has tougher rules on family reunions and how long refugees can stay in the country. And Nobel Prize-winning American scientist James Watson has died at the age of 97. He co-discovered the double helix structure of DNA with Francis Crick at the age of 25, opening the door to help explain how DNA replicates and carries genetic information. The discovery turned him into a legendary figure, but later in life he faced condemnation for some controversial views about race and women. Those are the latest GB News headlines. I'll have more for you in half an hour.
Thank you, Sophia Wensler, and it's very nice to have you back. And welcome back to all of you viewers watching Saturday Morning Live this morning with Charlie Peters and me, Olivia Utley.
Now let's go to our top story, because Donald Trump has gone to war with the BBC as the White House has accused the corporation of purposeful dishonesty and 100% fake news.
Washington launched its attack over the way a Panorama documentary selectively edited a speech made by the president.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
Well, Caroline Levitt, Donald Trump's press secretary, hit out saying that British taxpayers are being forced to fund a leftist propaganda machine.
Well, with us now is former BBC executive and presenter Roger Bolton. Now, Roger, I mean, the best defence I've heard from the BBC is that this was a mistake. Can you really argue it was a mistake? What happened? They fell accidentally into the editing studio?
I can't tell you. It was wrong that it should have been edited in that way. But let's start where we are. I mean, what the facts are. You shouldn't believe the White House. It lies. Trump lies. And the fact is that Congress, both the House of Representatives and the Senate, voted to condemn and to impeach Donald Trump by the Senate by 57 votes to 43 because of trying to stage a coup, a self-coup, as they called it. These are the facts. Now, and also, by the way, 7 Republicans voted for that as well. He is now trying to rewrite history. He encouraged people to go to Washington. He used language consistently just short of the line, told to fight and so on. And what did he do the moment he got back into power? He pardoned over 1,000 people who'd been convicted of a variety of very serious offences. He was trying to deny the democratic decision of the American people who voted for Joe Biden. And subsequently...
Remarkable that you've said... Roger, it's remarkable that you've accused Donald Trump of rewriting history when we've just played a clip of the BBC selectively editing a speech quite literally to redisplay and to twist falsely
it's quite
what he
possible
said.
to say both things. It's quite possible to say both things. Trump said of the Democratic election in the States it was a big steal. Nobody in the courts and anywhere else have supported that. His own vice president agreed that it was a fair election and signed it into law. What is happening is Trump is trying to rewrite history. Now, let's look at the question of the Panorama. The overall programme was fair. That editing was not fair and should not have been done. But by looking at a small example like that, you miss the bigger picture of what Trump was up to. And there is a propaganda campaign going on here against the BBC for a variety of reasons. The BBC has made a mistake. It should come out. It's wrong of it not to come out and explain the circumstances. But to use one small example to suggest that the whole organisation is biased, and for you to take seriously the White House talking this being 100% propaganda when their record in relation to the truth is, well, shall we say, strange.
Sorry, Roger, can we just stop you there? The idea that this is just one small example of BBC bias, this is not the only controversy that the BBC has found itself caught up in. A few months ago, there was a film about the war in Gaza, which was narrated by the son of a Hamas minister. The BBC has admitted it was wrong over that. It's not just one example, it's a whole series of quite serious examples of BBC unbiased, isn't it?
There are serious issues, but you've got to understand the fundamental problem here is we have a very divided country and everything is polarised. And people are locked into their silos and they only see, you know, what they want to hear. If you look at the Middle East situation, Danny Cohen, who's the former director of television at the BBC, runs a propaganda organisation effectively supporting the Netanyahu government. No problem
Roger,
about
Danny
that.
Cohen is in here and he would absolutely very strenuously deny that. I want to just challenge what you said before, though. You spoke about... Roger, you spoke about people being in silos. Roger, you can't just start attacking someone who's not here with a serious allegation. You are. Let me come in. Let me come in. Roger, you spoke about people being in silos. The whole point of a national, a public service broadcaster, as it tries to go beyond those. It tries to, you know, report accurately and fairly. They're putting people more further into silos by willfully misleading the audience, as is the allegation against the BBC. The BBC should be above those silos, but actually, contrary to your position, it's making it worse.
No, I agree with you. It should be up. By the Danny Code, it's just a factual point. It runs a media monitoring organisation, and just check it out. There's nothing wrong with that, but it should be known that that's what he does. Like others, run others. What I'm trying to make the point is everything's polarised. People are attacking the BBC because largely they want their position to dominate. It's like being in the middle of the road and being hit by traffic going both ways. Now, in these circumstances, it's crucial the BBC doesn't make mistakes. And it has made mistakes. But get them in proportion and recognise what's going on here. There's a propaganda war going over in the Middle East. There's a propaganda war going on with the White House. The White House is trying to rewrite history about what Donald Trump did.
But the BBC is literally rewriting history. That's the evidence we've demonstrated. That's what the Telegraph has shown. The BBC itself is rewriting history. Is this not an example, Roger, of the BBC conducting its own propaganda campaign, as you put it?
No, it's BBC making mistakes it shouldn't make. But for you to generalise, as a journalist, from you to generalise from one example to say the whole thing is biased is not.
Just one example,
You've got to have a more substantial
I think we've listed a couple of other examples. Just very quickly.
Right. But look at the number of examples of Trump lying.
I don't think two wrongs make a right here, even if you accept the idea, which we don't necessarily, that Donald Trump is lying. Just very, very quickly before we go, I mean, this is a huge mistake. And as you say, the BBC has not apologised. We've had a very tepid statement, which we'll read out in a moment, saying that the BBC will take on feedback. Surely they have to do more than that. Surely someone at the top needs to go. Is this the end of Tim Davie?
I don't think so, though. Is it near the end? I mean, look, we're about to enter charter renewal. The other background to this is the future of the BBC is at stake. It's chartered to operate, the licence fee. A number of people want to hit the BBC hard and get it out of the way because it stops their commercial interests. In these circumstances, the BBC mustn't make mistakes. It's made mistakes. But get them into proportion. It shouldn't be the end of Tim Davie. It shouldn't be the end of the BBC. Please be a little more sceptical about Donald Trump and his White House propaganda, and go and talk to those Republicans who voted in favour of the motion which said he cheated in the election, which he did.
Former BBC executive, presenter Roger Bolton, thank you very much for your time this morning. A BBC spokesperson has told GB News, well, we don't comment on leaked documents. When the BBC receives feedback, it takes it seriously and considers it carefully. Olivia, look. Donald Trump has faced many allegations, obviously, of lying, of misleading people, and, of course, of that so-called coup in January of 2021. But we expect journalists to not do the same thing, right?
Absolutely. And as we were saying there, two wrongs don't make a right. Whatever Donald Trump did, that sounds like a little bit of whataboutery as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, moving on. Residents in Crowborough are lining up people from the army barracks this morning to visually represent the number of asylum seekers temporarily housed in local training camps.
Now, Wealdon District Council called on the Home Office to reverse the plans, claiming it had totally failed to engage with the community or provide assurances around safeguarding for both asylum seekers and residents.
Yes, the Home Office said military sites are being considered with the aim of reducing the impact on communities and delivering better outcome for taxpayers.
And it comes as there are reports this morning, forgive me, that Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood is set to announce a huge shake-up of the immigration system based on Denmark's rules.
Well, we're joined now by GB News' national reporter Jack Carson, who is in Crowborough. Jack, the protest has already started. What's the mood like on the ground? Tell us everything.
Well, we're on the move, Olivia and Charlie, because there are so many people outside the training camp. There's another protest in the town of Crowborough, which we're now going to go and join up with. Hundreds of people have gathered here with all kinds of different signs you'll be able to see around us. The one here saying lives of those who live in Crowborough matter. Ben Grant from the Residents' Council joins us now. Ben, why have so many hundreds of people wanted to come out this morning and protest?
Well, we just feel like we've been let down by the government, basically. You know, we're a small town, it's 20,000 people. We're going to be surged with at least 600 undocumented men who are going to have nothing to do. And we went to the council meeting, and it was very clear that the government didn't have our interests at heart. And I was approached personally by many of our vulnerable, so elderly, women, and they were asking me, look, what are we going to do? We don't have a police station in town. We have the nearest police probably 15 minutes away. Can you help us? So a number of us have volunteered our time to set up a residents' response group to try and help the residents and basically be there where the police aren't. And that's the feeling we're getting. we're just being let down by the government, we're being let down by emergency services, and we're having to pay more in tax. You know, in a few weeks, Rachel Reeves is going to tell us, by the way, we need some more money off you, and we just feel absolutely despondent at this point.
Now, the Prime Minister says he's determined to end the use of asylum hotels, that training camps like the one here in Crowborough are an option to provide better for community and for the taxpayer. Is he right in that?
What I would say is, why does it have to be an open gate policy? You know, the benefit of using a military camp is that it can be secured. These are undocumented people who have arrived here illegally. We don't know anything about them. Why would we let them have free reign of the town? We all know what 600 blokes sat around doing nothing all day is like. Why would we not close the gate? Why is that not the first priority? That at least solves the problem of security. And then next, we've had other ideas. Why not offshore it? Why does it have to be brought into our local towns, especially when we haven't been consulted?
And that's the thing we found when we came here, when this news broke, that there hadn't been any kind of consultation. Has that led, you think, to more anger in the community because they feel like they haven't given consent to this, they haven't been consulted on the finer details of exactly when those migrants move into that training camp, how it's going to work here in the community?
Oh, 100%. And actually doing a bit of digging, we found out that not only were we not consulted, but there were members of the council and the government that actively hid this from the town and tried to surprise us on it late so we wouldn't have time to react. That's just not good faith. You know, we're happy to work with the government, but unfortunately they're treating us like they own us, and that's just not on.
Ben Grant from the Residents' Council, thank you so much for joining us and speaking to us this morning. If we just shoot the camera up, you'll be able to see just for how far of a distance these protests go. Hundreds of people gathering as we walk to the village green here. Of course, all of them, you know, here protesting, saying they want their community protected, Charlie and Olivia, against the move to move asylum seekers into the Crowborough training camp towards the end of November.
Well, thank you so much, Jack, for that report, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing from you again later in the programme. A spokesperson for the Home Office said, "We are furious at the level of illegal migrants and asylum hotels. This government will close every asylum hotel. Work is well underway, with more suitable sites being brought forward to ease pressure on communities."
We are working closely with local authorities, property partners and across government so that we can accelerate delivery. We've just got some breaking news for you now as well, because we've got some reports coming in that a woman is in a critical condition after she was stabbed in the neck in what police believe to be an unprovoked attack.
West Midlands police were called to Smallbrook, Queensway, Birmingham shortly before 9 p.m. last night after reports of a stabbing.
And the woman in her 30s said to have suffered a serious neck injury and she remains in hospital. Police arrested a man in his 20s near to the scene and he remains in custody.
Detective Inspector James Nix said, "We believe this was an unprovoked attack and are working to understand why it happened." Well, more on that story as we get it.
Well, thank you, Jack Carson. And still to come, we will be looking at a story coming into us about girl guiding, because it's facing a legal challenge from a mother who accuses the charity of failing to support the Supreme Court ruling on gender and sex. We'll be joined by GB News Health and Science Editor Lucy Johnston next.
But after this, there are reportedly 4 more live cases of prisoners being sought by the authorities. That's escaped prisoners who got away and seem to be on the loose. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Dancing professional and entrepreneur AJ Pritchard. AJ, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Last saw you when you looked exactly the same as you did now a few years ago. Are you shocked by this news?
I think they're iconic, aren't they, Tess and Claude? But I think, like, people kind of worry, like, is this the magic of the show that's missing? But I think the magic of Strictly is the pros, the crew, the hair, the makeup, everything that it is. But I think my one worry is making sure that when you're going to, like, replace somebody like Tess and Claude, it needs to be somebody that is quirky, original. Like, let's take, like, French and Saunders. Like, you're thinking of yourselves now, aren't you? It's that thing, because they are so well placed to bounce off each other. And I think that's what their role is. Like, they do it so perfectly. That is the scary part. How do you replace such an iconic double act, a duo?
And they've been at the core of the show for such a long time, starting off in different positions, but both there for 20-odd years. I mean, it's just an extraordinary... Does this sort of score or underline some of the troubles that the show has had in the last few years? A few scandals with participants, viewing numbers down a little bit. Have we passed peak Strictly?
I don't think so. I think the one thing with a show like Strictly is you're going to have different viewings over each year. You're going to see that kind of... Maybe you could say it's slightly plateaued at the moment, but I do feel like with the right cast, the right celebrities coming in, the right pros, like, it is so addictive. And when you suddenly sit down to watch it for, like, half an hour, you're like, OK, I'm attached to this journey now. I want to see how this is going to progress. I think that's the secret to these shows, really casting that celebrities and the pros themselves to really make it like, oh, I'm attached to that person now. I'm invested. I have to. My dinner plans have changed now because I need to watch Strictly tonight.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, and time now for the Great British Giveaway. And if you're starting to feel festive, how about Christmas on Us this year? That's £40,000 cash to spend on the Christmas of your dreams, £1,000 to spend on Christmas lunch from your favourite supermarket, and a GB News festive goodie bag thrown in.
We say £40,000 for Christmas on Us.
I keep saying this. What about Christmas?
It's the next 5 Christmases on Us, I think. Yeah, so that sounds great, doesn't it? And here are all the details you need for a chance to be in it to win it.
You could win your entire Christmas on Us this year, all magically delivered to you in time for the big day. There's cash, £30,000 in tax-free cash to make your new year go with a bang. There's also a further £10,000 to spend on all the gifts. We've also got Christmas lunch for you, with £1,000 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. And finally, a festive GB News goodie bag, so there's something for everyone under the tree. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Oh, good luck and Merry Christmas. Is it too early to say that?
Yes, far too early to say Merry Christmas. Not having that.
Right, well, to join us now to look through the top stories of today, we're delighted to be joined by the Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, Henry Hill, and the journalist and broadcaster, Judita De Silva. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Morning. Right, let's start with this extraordinary story online from ITV News about 4 mistakenly released prisoners still on the loose. Obviously, after this extraordinary coverage in the week about a couple being mistakenly released from HMP Wandsworth. Judita, what's your reaction?
I mean, it's safe to say that the system is broken, but I think what has been happening recently highlights that when you're trying to have a shift towards police reform and prison reform, the bedrock for this has got to be information processing and training. You're also under-resourced when it comes to who is handling this information. Because like I said before, this idea of releasing people who who have committed less egregious crimes is something that is done in a lot of countries when you have overcrowding in prisons. But obviously, when you're dealing with a system that they say is even worse than analog in a lot of places, it isn't digitized properly.
It's pen and paper.
Yeah, you can't have someone on the fly making a decision where they might misinterpret handwriting. So you have to deal with how information is stored, how it's interpreted, who is interpreting it, and also people are operating in silos. So is the immigration office speaking to the prison officials as well?
I mean, Juditha's right, the system is in a mess, but ultimately, surely this is the fault of politicians. The buck has to stop somewhere. Labour have now been in charge for a year and a half. They keep saying how angry they are about this situation. Isn't David Lammy to blame?
He's responsible. That's what being in power actually means. I mean, the system is crushingly overloaded, and that is the result of a long period of failures by both parties. Essentially, no one likes building prisons, but everyone loves sending people to prison. There's nothing...
The Tories definitely have a lot to answer.
Oh, absolutely. Don't deny that for a second. I mean, there's nothing inherent about pen and paper. We managed to have a functioning prison system in the era of pen and paper. The idea that you need computers for this to necessarily work, I think, is a bit of buck passing by some of the officials, but it doesn't make life any easier. But the problem is that we simply don't have enough prison places. And when we talk about releasing people who've done less serious offences, the thing to remember is that in this country, the only people who go to prison for less serious offences are serious serial offenders. For non-violent offences, the average in 2023, the average number of convictions before somebody went to prison for something like shoplifting was 70 plus, right? So the people that they're releasing, they're not murderers and so on, but they are the people who will go and cause a disproportionate amount of the low-level crime that hugely impacts people.
And Judith, I mean, some of the people who have been mistakenly released, these 4, they were understood to be missing since last year, and they are forming part of the 262 who were mistakenly released in the year to March of 2025. So this does demonstrate that they're still catching up with this problem. Now, obviously, the government's position is that they inherited a system in crisis, as Henry said, not enough prison spaces. But the early release scheme that they introduced last September has undoubtedly formed a part of this problem.
It has, but to the point that he made, I do agree that the low-level crime are often serial offenders, but then it's an entire food chain of problems, because when you look at the probationary services and who actually handles that, that is under-resourced as well, because low-level crime should be actually monitored at a probation level as opposed to a punitive prison level. And also when you look at the differences, when you said 262 in the 12 months up to March, it was 115 in the 12 months before that. So this is something that has been compounding over time. So if you're thinking about, yes, it's an ugly thing to say, but America makes big money building prisons, and that is something that the UK has to think about, because if you're then going to become more severely punitive to low-level serial offenders, you need more prisons.
Absolutely. Just to say that, though, it isn't just, as Henry mentioned, it isn't just low-level offenders. Some of the people who were released on the early release scheme were sexual offenders and people who were convicted of domestic abuse. So it isn't just low-level offenders here, but I get your point.
That came down to human error, and that's why I dispute the point about digitising.
No, there were people being released early who had been convicted
previously, but the crime they were serving for. But I'm saying all of this, I do agree that these people shouldn't have been released, or when they were released, they should have been released to a different level of monitoring. That wasn't happening. But this all came down to human error or deficiency of resource. That's why digitising is necessary, because you can do more and you can do it quickly and you can do it accurately.
Well, let's move on to the next story here, because the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, she's said to be inspired by the immigration rules in Denmark, Henry, looking at reducing incentives for people to move to Britain and also making it more difficult for family reunion as well. In some of the reporting that we've seen on this online so far, we've seen a supposedly left-wing Labour MP saying it has echoes of the far right and could be too hardcore. What do you make of these plans being mooted?
I mean, essentially, the Danish Social Democrats have done exactly what Labour sort of thinks it wants to do, which is that 10 years ago, the Danish People's Party, which is a sort of hard-right, far-right party, polling at 20-something%, it looked like it was going to go the way of every other, European democracy. Now, the Social Democrats comfortably in first place, the far-right down on 4%. Why? Because the Social Democrats took immigration seriously. Effectively, you...
Put it down by 90%, illegal immigration.
Right.
It's astonishing.
I mean, it's a harkening back to the days of New Labour, when New Labour actually had their asylum system overthrown by the courts because it was rejecting 98% of appeals, which seemed hard to imagine now. But it's things like, getting rid of family reunification. Now, family reunification is one of the biggest problems because it makes everything exponential, because if you accept somebody, suddenly they generate several automatic claims for people who can come here, and then they generate more claims. But it's also things like you can't claim welfare if your asylum claim is rejected, you're given 3 meals a day at the deportation centre. There are cash incentives as well.
But Juditha, the Prime Minister in Denmark, Frederiksen, she's the only centre-left leader in Europe, really, to have grown her support amid this migration crisis in Europe. As Henry says, if there's any country they're going to be inspired by Labour, Denmark's a pretty good one to choose.
No, I do think that Shabana Mahmood is doing something that is interesting and potentially beneficial if the rest of the party would kind of get behind this, because, again, you will not be able to functionally lead if you don't gravitate towards the centre, and that point you made is pertinent. You are going to have to occupy that space politically in order to appeal to problems like this that affect everyone. Again, the problem has gotten to a point where you're going to have to do things that are not exactly the essence of Labour, but then are necessary for providing a solution to the problem. And that is something that, looking at it as an opportunity to say that that's not very left, that's not very Labour, it's not going to help, the problem's not going to go away. So I do agree that what Shabana Mahmood is doing is necessary at this point in time.
Thank you very much, Henry and Juditha, and I think that's a really important point you raised there. If they can get it through Labour MPs, then this might be a good idea. I think that's a very big if.
Juditha, you say it's not very left, not very Labour. Most Labour voters do want significant immigration restrictions. It's just whether or not the parliamentary party...
The parliamentary party are on the same page,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, still to come, GB News can reveal that Police Scotland failed to investigate a grooming gang in Glasgow that targeted vulnerable girls in care. We'll be covering that full report with 2 guests in a moment.
But first, your latest news headlines from Sophia Wensler.
Good morning. Your headlines at 10:33. Donald Trump's White House has attacked the, quote, fake news BBC, accusing the corporation of purposeful dishonesty over the way a Panorama documentary selectively edited a speech made by the president. Labour MPs are plotting to oust Sir Keir Starmer, it's being reported, as their anger grows about Number 10 and their plan to raise income tax. Residents in Crowborough will today line up 600 people up from the army barracks to demonstrate the number of asylum seekers being temporarily housed in training camps. The UK could be set for a tougher Denmark-style immigration system, as the Home Secretary is reportedly set to announce a huge shake-up. And a woman is in a critical condition in Birmingham after she was stabbed in the neck in what police have described as an unprovoked attack. Those are the headlines. More news at the top of the hour.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Thank you, Sophia. After the break, we'll be speaking to Susan Smith from 4 Women Scotland and Fiona Goddard, a Bradford grooming gang victim who was trafficked to Glasgow, as GB News reveals more information about police failures to investigate abuse gangs.
Yes, and the Girl Guides are mired in controversy again, with one mother threatening to sue because she's worried that her daughter is going to end up having to stay in a hotel room with a man. All of that after the break.
Good morning, I'm here with your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, it's a bit of a slow start for some of us, particularly towards the north and east today, but otherwise it is going to be a largely fine, often sunny day. Definitely the drier day of the weekend for most. That being said, as I mentioned, across some parts of Scotland and down the eastern side of England, there's a bit of cloud, there's some outbreaks of rain, but a lot of that's clearing away towards the northeast as we go through this morning with some fine sunny weather following in behind, albeit a bit of cloud and some rain pushing into western parts of Northern Ireland. Now, temperatures may not be quite as high as they were earlier on this week, but nonetheless they are still several degrees above average for the time of year, and with a decent amount of sunshine and some light winds, it's going to feel a bit warmer than you might expect for November. Now, as we go into this evening, are you heading away to a fireworks display? Well, the weather's looking fine for many places, except across Shetland. Could be a bit of rain, perhaps a bit of rain pushing into the Western Isles, but otherwise across much of Scotland and Northern England, it's fine with some clear skies around. Different story for Northern Ireland, cloud, rain pushing in from the west, the wind's picking up too, but across the rest of England and Wales, well, it's looking fine and dry. The fine weather that we'll have through much of the day will continue as we go into the evening, so good news if you are planning to watch any fireworks. Later on overnight, we are going to see more cloud and rain spilling its way across Northern Ireland and into much of Scotland, staying dry with clear clear skies though across much of England and Wales, and with those clear skies, temperatures are going to drop a little bit lower than some recent nights. We could see temperatures in rural spots of England and Wales getting into low single figures, maybe even a touch of frost over some parts of Scotland. Obviously, the towns and cities will stay markedly milder. As we go into Sunday then, a dry start for many places, but cloud and rain is going to sweep its way eastwards. It's not looking particularly heavy, but there could be some heavier bursts, but also some drier interludes and something brighter following in from the west. Temperatures looking fairly similar to today, but obviously with less sunshine around, feeling a little less mild.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live. And the Girl Guiding charity is facing landmark legal action from a mother who claims its policies are illegal and unsafe because they allow biological males to join and volunteer in what should be a female-only organisation.
Now, the mother, who wants her daughter to become a guide, has said that the charity's inclusion rules breach its royal charter and ignore the Supreme Court's ruling that for the purposes of the Equality Act, sex means biological sex.
The charity says they remain firmly committed to treating everyone with dignity and respect as they assess the impact of that court ruling. Well, joining us now is GB News Health and Science Editor Lucy Johnston. Lucy, can you explain this for us? I mean, I can't really get my head around it. The Girl Guides say that they are committed to providing a single-sex service, but they are also committed to allowing trans people to join and volunteer. I don't quite understand it.
Well, Girl Guiding sort of took out a trans-inclusive policy in 2017, and that meant that anyone who identified as a female, even though they were born biologically male, could join the group either as a volunteer or as a guide, a girl guide. Now, it's not the first time that they've become in trouble over this. There's been 2 people who've been expelled from the organisation for complaining about this policy. And now, since the Supreme Court ruling in April, it's become more of the spotlight's been thrown on it. And this mother is concerned that her 7-year-old daughter will be sharing toilets, will be sharing showers or doing contact sports with biological males who identify as females, and she says this isn't safe. Now, the Girl Guides say that safeguarding is their utmost priority, and they say that they are still looking at the regulations. And because the government has thrown this into the long grass, the Supreme Court ruling came out earlier this year, but the government hasn't issued new guidance. Lots of organisations are interpreting it as they wish. So the domestic violence charity Refuge is still working with trans women, biological males, where the British Transport Police has now said that it will not allow biological males to do strip searches or strip searches on women. So it's very controversial. It highlights all the culture wars around this and the social media debates, and it's still a very heated issue.
Lucy, you say it's very controversial, but the Supreme Court ruling, we've described it as a landmark ruling. Certainly a lot of campaigners thought it would, in a sense, draw a line under this issue. Why do you think so many organisations, hundreds of days later, are still resisting, in some sense, that direction legally?
Because the legislation, there's sort of different tiers of legislation, and until the government actually puts out new guidance, people can interpret different bits of legislation as they wish. And it's just, I mean, it would seem pretty obvious, wouldn't it, that, you know, the Supreme Court said that, you know, sex should be determined on what you were assigned at birth. But people still seem to be able to pick bits of the law and say that, you know, this is discriminatory if you don't let trans women use toilets or use what would have been female-only spaces. So I think it's up to the government now to put forward legislation, and that hasn't been laid before Parliament yet. So people will still continue, and there's lots of sort of cases going on and debates. Hampstead Pond is one. There's a High Court case been lodged about that. Females in Hampstead Pond were not happy about sharing their space with biological males, trans females. So it's and the NHS has also interpreted the guidance in a way that allows trans women to use toilets in some trusts. So it's still a hot topic in that sense, and it's up to the government to clarify, I think.
Well, thank you very much, Lucy Johnson. What a messy situation. Let's hope that the government issues some clear guidance soon. But a spokesperson for Girl Guiding said, the safeguarding and well-being of our members is at the heart of everything we do in guiding. Following the Supreme Court ruling, we are working closely with external advisors to ensure our policies remain lawful.
They say that we also remain firmly committed to treating everyone with dignity and respect throughout this time. Well, still to come here on Saturday Morning Live, we'll be joined by the co-director of For Women's Scotland, Susan Smith, and also grooming gang survivor Fiona Goddard. And this comes as GB News reveals allegations that Police Scotland failed to investigate a grooming gang in Glasgow that targeted vulnerable girls in care.
But first, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Heavy thundery rain is heading towards parts of Spain and Portugal as we go into next week. But before that, the heavy thundery downpours across the Balearics through today, now heading eastwards across into parts of the central Med and going to affect Italy as we go through tomorrow, could cause some impacts. Further west, turning drier, albeit across western parts of Portugal and Spain. A front is going to be moving in, and this could bring some downpours as we go through next week. Otherwise, a lot of dry weather for many.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised. twist.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live. Now, GB News can reveal allegations that Police Scotland failed to investigate a grooming gang in Glasgow that targeted vulnerable girls in care.
Yes, one of the gang's alleged victims has spoken exclusively to our national reporter Charlie Peters, sitting here next to me, about her experience amid growing calls for an inquiry into grooming gangs in Scotland.
Well, joining us now is the co-director of For Women Scotland, Susan Smith, and also grooming gang survivor Fiona Goddard. Thank you both for your time this morning. Fiona, I just want to start with you because you're from Bradford, you've had successful trials against perpetrators in West Yorkshire, but you were actually trafficked to Glasgow as part of your abuse. Can you tell us more about that?
So some of the men in Bradford had relatives that went and moved to Glasgow and Edinburgh, and they established drug rounds there. They would then use girls from Bradford and taxi drivers to transport drugs up to there, and then once we got there, things would obviously happen up there as well, by men up there. I also know that they were doing it to children around the cities as well up there. Yeah. So I remember going up in a taxi to like a dingy terraced house, and it was like a shared occupancy house, and there were just loads of men in there, all sort of like bagging up drugs, and there was girls sat around on the sofas, and that's basically what I can remember.
But Fiona, you're so brave speaking about this morning. And of course, it comes after we revealed yesterday some new allegations from Glasgow from a survivor known as Taylor, who said that the police were actually, they had an inkling about her abuse. They visited her care home, but never spoke to her. What was your reaction to our report yesterday? And do you think there needs to be an inquiry in Scotland as well?
So I mentioned Scotland in my video evidence in 2014, so the police in West Yorkshire were well aware that there were links to Scotland. I would have thought that they would have communicated with Scottish police around this type of thing, but clearly no one bothered to try and investigate further. Scotland should definitely be included in this inquiry. It's all cross boundaries and cross borders, and putting it off at the border with Scotland makes no sense at all.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. Really, really grateful, Fiona. It's so brave of you to speak out, and it's so important what you're telling us. Susan, I mean, why on earth is Scotland being treated differently to England? It doesn't seem to make sense on the face of it.
Well, it doesn't, and obviously Scotland has a separate system, so that's why the inquiry is not across the whole of the UK. But the Scottish Government have resisted calls, most recently in the recent Victims Bill. The Conservatives tried to put in an amendment to ensure that there would be some inquiry into grooming gangs. And the Scottish Government just basically brushed it off and in a way saying this doesn't happen here, this isn't a problem here. And it's just not true. And I think because sometimes they decide there's a racial aspect to this, they don't want to get dragged into that. And obviously Scotland is predominantly white, but, you know, grooming gangs can happen across many communities. There was a big case in Scotland this year in Dundee, which involved a Romanian grooming gang who had been trafficking girls around Scotland. So, you know, it's not something the Scottish Government can pretend is not a problem. Scottish exceptionalism of this sort is the worst example of thinking that our nation is somehow better than the rest of the country. We're not.
And Fiona, obviously the police in Scotland say that they are focusing very keenly on this issue. They've got a child abuse unit, and the Scottish Government say that they have a strategic group that's been meeting recently to assess the problem. But FOIs have shown that they don't actually record group-based abuse. They don't recognise that pattern, and you can't access it on the police systems, as it were. What's your reaction to that, Fiona? Do you get the sense that if you can't recognise the pattern, then you can't properly target grooming gangs?
So I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding already to do with CSE. I don't think people fully understand it anyway, so not having a documented track of suspected CSE is going to make it even more difficult. This is part of the reason an inquiry is needed, so we can gather deeper understanding into the systematic workings of the gangs.
I mean, Susan, is part of this a sort of constitutional issue? As you say, there are two separate systems in England and Scotland, but this isn't just a case of there also being grooming gangs operating in Scotland. As Fiona said, you've got English grooming gangs operating in Scotland too. So should both the government here and in Scotland find a way to create a whole UK inquiry?
Yes, I think so. I think joined-up thinking is needed here because obviously we've got an example right here of someone who was trafficked across the border. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous to think that there's some sort of force field on the M6 or the A1 that stops the gangs coming up to Scotland and moving victims around the country. Of course they are. And, you know, this is known. The Care Inspectorate's done a report. Social workers have said that this is a problem. There are grooming gangs in every major city in Scotland. They know that it is happening. As you say, there's no the police recording of this is inadequate, so we're not getting the research, we're not getting the data that's needed, and we're not getting the results. This whole idea the Scottish Government have of setting up interminable working groups to look at issues and then it's shunted off and onto the back burner and we never hear anything again. This is serious. Okay. Young women and girls are suffering and we need to take some action immediately.
OK, co-director of For Women Scotland, Susan Smith, and Fiona Goddard from Bradford. Thank you so much for your time this morning and thank you for your bravery, Fiona.
Yes, a Scottish Government spokesperson said, "We fully recognise the devastating impact such abuse has on victims and families. That is why we formed the National Child Sexual Exploitation Group, which brings together key services and expert stakeholders." To inform our collective response, we have spoken to Detective Inspector
Alexis Jay as well, and that work. And Police Scotland Detective Superintendent Nicky McGovern said that officers from their child abuse units are working tirelessly to ensure that victims are protected and that offenders are brought to justice. They also said that following Casey's report and recommendations, they're identifying areas for improvement and they're working closely with colleagues across Britain.
Well, we've got lots more to come on Saturday Morning Live today, including more of today's top stories, that protest in Crowborough, and an amazing story of SAS officer who's gone to follow Lawrence of Arabia's footsteps. Don't go anywhere.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The weekend is finally here. Once the fog clears away this morning, it'll allow plenty of sunny spells to develop across the country. Feeling a little cooler than it did yesterday, but temperatures still above average for the time of year. Mostly dry, settled conditions, all thanks to a ridge of high pressure, but low pressure is never too far away, eventually bringing in some rain later. But for most, this afternoon in particular, there'll be plenty of sunshine. We can't rule out some showers, particularly around Wales, southwest England, and a fair amount of cloud across Scotland. This producing some drizzle at times, but feeling pleasant in the light winds, highs reaching around 15 degrees Celsius. Then through into this evening, still cloudy for a time across Scotland, but only rain and drizzle eventually pushing its way northwards, drifting into northern Scotland, through into the Northern Isles into the course of the evening, turning clearer for a time, but I'm afraid soon being replaced by further cloud and outbreaks of rain. These at first pushing into parts of Northern Ireland. Plenty of clear skies across northern England, central parts and south and southeastern areas of England, but still some showers just starting to push into western Wales and parts of southwest England. These should be mostly isolated, so remaining dry for many areas, but further spells of rain pushing into parts of Northern Ireland, western areas of Scotland. This could turn quite heavy through the early hours of the morning, and some quite strong winds associated with this rain as well. But across the south and southeast, remaining mostly dry, plenty of clear skies, so it's likely we'll see some mist and fog once again by the time we reach the morning, and still feeling a little chilly through the early hours as well. But I'm afraid Sunday won't be quite as settled. Cloud outbreaks of rain pushing in from the west. This could turn heavy across Wales and southwest England, turning a little brighter across Northern Ireland later, and still plenty of bright and sunny spells across East Anglia and southeast England. Still pleasant in the sunshine, highs reaching 15 degrees.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
You could win your entire Christmas on us this year, all magically delivered to you in time for the big day. There's cash, £30,000 in tax-free cash to make your new year go with a bang. There's also a further £10,000 to spend on all the gifts. We've also got Christmas lunch for you, with £1,000 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. And finally, a festive GB News goodie bag, so there's something for everyone under the tree. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dawdney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 11 a.m. on Saturday, the 8th of November, live across the United Kingdom. This is Saturday Morning Live.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight.
The White House has accused the BBC of deliberate dishonesty, condemning the way a Panorama documentary edited a speech made by the US president.
So today we are asking, could the BBC's actions have an impact on the special relationship between Britain and the United States?
And residents in Crowborough are lining up people from the army barracks to visually represent the number of asylum seekers temporarily housed in local training camps.
As Carmen says, the Home Secretary is set to announce a huge shake-up of the immigration system. Our reporter Jack Carson is on the ground.
Well, this protest has gone on the move from the training camp. We're now walking through Crowborough as thousands of people gather to say they want to protect their community.
And the Chancellor is set to announce a stealth tax raid on retirement savings in her upcoming budget. Experts warn it would reduce the size of pension pots and cut net income. More on that ahead of 26th of November.
And later this hour, we'll be joined by ex-SAS officer Howard Leedham, who was part of the first group to trek the same route as Lawrence of Arabia from Saudi Arabia into the desert in Jordan.
And a West Yorkshire church is draped with 26 metres of handmade poppies in a moving Remembrance Sunday display. We'll get Anna Riley's report. The biggest stories, boldest opinions and liveliest debates over the next hour. I'm Olivia Utley.
And I'm Charlie Peters, and your weekend starts here. Great to have your company this morning, and very much looking forward to introducing you all to Howard Leedham, quite a remarkable man whose team did follow the Lawrence of Arabia route, that famous route to take back the port city of Aqaba. You've seen the film, obviously, I'm sure. It's only about 3.5 hours long, so you can catch up this afternoon if you've got a cosy afternoon lined up.
Perfect Saturday afternoon. Yeah, we're really looking forward to talking to him. And of course, we'll also be talking about this huge controversy and argument between the BBC and President Donald Trump. Could this be the end of Tim Davie? Could it be the end of the BBC licence fee? It does feel like maybe there's a couple of nails going in a coffin here, but...
Yes, and a few rattled former BBC presenters out and about today, I think, trying to defend the corporation in what is potentially a rather indefensible moment with that dodgy edit of the Trump speech. But let us know your views, of course. We're keen to hear from you throughout the show. gbnews.com/your say.
But before we do anything else, Sophia Wemsler has all your news headlines.
Charlie, Olivia, thank you. Good morning. Your headlines from the GB Newsroom at 11:03. Donald Trump's White House has attacked the, quote, fake news BBC, accusing the corporation of purposeful dishonesty over the way a Panorama documentary selectively edited a speech made by the president.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight.
Speaking to The Telegraph, Donald Trump's press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, said British taxpayers are being forced to fund a leftist propaganda machine. Meanwhile, a BBC spokesperson told GB News, while we don't comment on leaked documents, when the BBC receives feedback, it takes it seriously and considers it carefully. Labour MPs are plotting to oust Sir Keir Starmer, it's being reported, as their anger grows about Number 10 and their plan to raise income tax. It's understood to be fuelled by despair about the party's poll ratings and discontent that the government may break Labour's manifesto promise. This is all despite the Prime Minister's recent efforts to engage more with his colleagues, even inviting rebellious backbenchers back into the fold. Residents in Crowborough will today line 600 people up from the army barracks to demonstrate the number of asylum seekers being temporarily housed in training camps. GB News national reporter Jack Carson has more for us.
Chants of "We want Starmer out" here outside the Crowborough training camp, where the Home Office planned to move around 90 illegal immigrants a day here from the end of November, leading up to a figure of 600 by the new year. But locals, when this decision was announced, were furious. They say they hadn't been consulted, and today hundreds of them are out here protesting. We've got signs of "Protect our children, protect our community and protect our families." People here are clearly unhappy at the Home Office decision to move asylum seekers into this training base here. The Prime Minister says he's doing that because he's frustrated and determined to close the use of asylum hotels. But it's clear that using this training camp to house asylum seekers is not something this community agrees with.
Meanwhile, the UK could be set for a tougher Denmark-style immigration system, as the Home Secretary is reportedly set to announce a huge shake-up. It's understood Shabana Mahmood is considering plans to make it easier to remove arrivals from the UK, while also reducing the incentives for those seeking to move here. She has supposedly been inspired by the Danish immigration system, which has tougher rules on family reunions and how long refugees can stay in the country. And volunteers have knitted 10,000 poppies for a 92-foot display cascading down a church tower in West Yorkshire. The handmade poppies have been hung on St Augustine's Church in the run-up to Remembrance Sunday. The banner is the work of the local Knit and Natter group, whose members began working on it back in January. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Charlie and Olivia.
Thank you, Sophia, and welcome back to Saturday Morning Live with Charlie Peters and me, Olivia Utley.
Let's go to our top story now, because Donald Trump has gone to war with the BBC as the White House has accused the corporation of purposeful dishonesty and 100% fake news.
Washington launched its attack over the way a Panorama documentary selectively edited a speech made by the US president.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
Well, Caroline Levitt, who's Donald Trump's press secretary, has hit out, saying that British taxpayers are being forced to fund a leftist propaganda machine. Well, joining us in the studio now is the spokesperson for Republicans overseas, Jennifer Ewing. Jennifer, thank you so much for coming in this morning.
For having me.
It wasn't just that strong line coming from Caroline Levitt. She also said that when she comes to the United Kingdom, she's in hotel rooms forced to watch the BBC, and it upsets her day. We should tell her GB News isn't too far away. Yes, exactly.
Not to mention, she's probably staying many times in Turnberry Hotel, so she could have a chat with her boss to change the station and put on GB in the background. But no, I mean it's a big deal, and especially if you look at the way it was, edited. The actual statements. I think there was something like 54 minutes apart, and they didn't make it clear that they were just doing a montage. But at the end of the day, President Trump is going to be okay with all of this. But the people who should really be upset about this are the British people who have looked to the BBC, the state broadcaster, for their news. And I remember during that time, because it was the lead up to the US election, so just before, just a little over a year ago this time, and people were so adamant that January 6th should be such a huge voting issue. Of course, it was not. Illegal immigration and the economy was. But I just couldn't figure out, why are people taking this out of context? No, it was not a great day for our country, but I think there is still a lot more to come out about this day that we don't know, so watch this space. But yeah, a lot of people in this country were completely misinformed about that.
I'm fascinated by the potential ramifications on the relationship between the US and the UK. Obviously, Keir Starmer has spent quite a lot of time this year cozying up to Donald Trump. How do you think the Prime Minister feels about this misstep on behalf of the state broadcaster? Do you think he's angry with the BBC, and could he do something about that?
Well, I mean, I don't know the control or not control that the Prime Minister has with regards to the BBC, but we do know there is massive bias against President Trump. I will tell you, as somebody that goes on, a lot of their local radio stations or other things, there's a very clear bias. And that's one thing, if you want to be an opinion show and you want to know that you're like left-leaning or right-leaning. But if you are supposed to be an unbiased show, that's unacceptable, because, again, the people it's affecting are the people in the United Kingdom who will not have accurate information. And then, 6 months later, a year later, they come out and they're like, oh, wow, that wasn't real.
Well, Jennifer, do you know what's particularly astonishing for me? It's that edited clip of Donald Trump making that speech. It's almost like an hour later, the two remarks. How's it taken so long for that detail to come out? Obviously, the whistleblowing memo is alerting it to all of us now, publicly, and, the front page of the Telegraph, that's a pretty good platform to let people know. But it is quite strange that that edit was able to take place and people just bought it. Does that maybe suggest a wider problem within the corporation where this sort of representation is just taken at face value without people properly questioning those edits?
100%. That is exactly what it is. And I'll tell you a true story. Last July, not this past July, so a year and a half ago, July, I was doing a radio interview with one of the BBCs, and I brought up the fact of, well, we now know that the Russia collusion was a hoax paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign. And the presenter, I won't mention the name, said, no, Jennifer, that's your conspiracy theory. That's not true. And I said, excuse me, that's not my conspiracy theory. We know that it's happened because Hillary Clinton paid a fine for that. So here we were 2.5 years later after the fine was paid, and the BBC is still fact-checking me incorrectly on this. So yes, these things are allowed to dangle out there, and people don't question them because, again, they think it's the state broadcaster and they're just getting the facts.
I mean, I think there are people who would argue that, and in fact we had one of them on the show a little bit earlier, Roger Bolton, former BBC executive, that, this was someone relatively junior in the organisation who made a mistake. It shouldn't have slipped under the radar. The BBC have almost sort of apologised. If the BBC came out now and issued a proper apology instead of what they've done, which is, saying that the BBC takes on feedback, do you think that would be enough to mollify Donald Trump and potentially repair that perhaps slightly fractured relationship between the US president and our Prime Minister?
Look, I don't know how much this is going to actually... no, actually, to answer your question, I don't, because this is not a one-off. If this had not happened over and over against, at the BBC, where it seems very biased against the president, I mean, I tell you that as somebody that goes on there often, then maybe you could say, OK, like you said, it was a junior, it was an editing mistake. But I think this was intentional. And again, why weren't they on, the second after this happened, 3-4 days ago, giving an apology, saying heads will roll, and this is unacceptable. Why is it not this huge correction? Instead, the woman came on and said, in some quarters, this is being discussed.
OK, Jennifer Ewing, thank you so much for your
Thanks for having me.
This morning. Well, let's go and speak to the Associate Editor of Labour Uncut, Kevin Maher. Kevin, thank you very much for your time this morning. You've just heard from Jennifer there, I hope, talking about how you've seen this statement from the BBC internally, talking about criticism from some quarters. The White House is quite a large quarter, wouldn't you say?
It is. I mean, this program Trump a Second Chance, as it was titled, was, I think, first broadcast last November, and I was just looking at the reviews of it actually, just before I came on, and I mean, the feature of it seemed to be it was closely following various Donald Trump supporters to try and understand their politics, their worldview, their mindset, how they arrive at the positions they have. So I suspect this has come as a big shock to BBC executives that it's sailed away for nearly 12 months before there's been this level of controversy attached to it. And I think when you look at the offending clip where this big long speech that Donald Trump made on the 6th of January 2021 in Washington, and as you say, it's 55 minutes apart. They spliced together half a sentence there and half a sentence from 55 minutes later, which is, in broadcasting, in journalism, an absolute no-no. You can't do that. It's completely unprofessional. It's completely unfair, and it becomes completely inaccurate. And the one thing that the BBC has got in its corner, in its stable, if you like, is it's an authoritative voice. And it's these kinds of mistakes, and generously calling it a mistake rather than a politically motivated attack, which others will, and I'm sure that's Jennifer's view. You can't do these things and remain an authoritative voice. And so this is really serious. It goes to the very heart of the BBC's integrity, and its journalism is paramount. In the heart of the BBC, and Panorama, of course, is its premier current affairs programme. So this is a direct hit. And you're right, when you've got the White House press secretary and the President of the United States on the warpath about this is as serious as it gets for the BBC, I think.
Yeah, and I suppose the BBC's defence that it was just someone junior, maybe they will issue an apology at some point soon. I'd just like to raise, though, Martine Croxall, a BBC News anchor, who said on air, she was reading from her autocue, she said pregnant people, and she did a little face and she corrected it to say pregnant women. Now, she has received this week a very big rap on the knuckles from her employers at the BBC. She's been quite seriously disciplined. That seems to stand in pretty stark contrast to this statement that we have from the BBC, not quite apologising, saying that the BBC will take on feedback for splicing together these two clips. Yeah. That does seem pretty extraordinary, doesn't it? Is that an example of sort of two-tier justice within the BBC, perhaps?
It's a double standard. It clearly is a double standard. I mean, you know, all Martine Croxall did was just to correct the language to establish a fact. There are only pregnant women. There are not pregnant people, clearly. So I think that was absolutely fair enough. I think there are 20 complaints. I suspect most of them utterly vexatious, and the BBC kind of jumps and, as you say, wraps her across the knuckles for amending the script. And you know, you can't make a big fuss about things like that and not make a big fuss about issues like this. This is really serious, I think. You know, this is a documentary. This is a good documentary. You know, I mean, you know, I was watching bits of it before I came. I'm not going to watch the whole thing, but you know, it's an important documentary. It's important that we understand the kind of motivations of your average Trump supporter. That's fair enough. But I think that when you then kind of put aside that impartial lens and then you know, you go for Donald Trump because you don't like Donald Trump, that's how it comes across. You can't do that and be a journalist. You can do that and be a columnist. You can do that and be a commentator. That's fair enough. But you can't do that and be a journalist. And the BBC's journalism is are the crown jewels. And you know, this besmirches them.
All right. Associate Editor of Labour Uncut, Kevin Marr, thank you very much for your time this morning. Do you know what's curious, Olivia? They made that documentary about Donald Trump ahead of the election. There wasn't a similar assessment of Kamala Harris for Panorama before that election took place, perhaps pointing to broader concerns that we've been discussing just now.
Well, the BBC spokesperson told GB News, well, we don't comment on leaked documents. When the BBC receives feedback, it takes it seriously and considers it carefully.
Right, moving on now, because residents in Crowborough are lining up people from the army barracks this morning to visually represent the number of asylum seekers temporarily housed in local training camps.
Wealdon District Council called on the Home Office to reverse the plans, claiming it had totally failed to engage with the community or provide assurances around safeguarding for both asylum seekers and for residents.
Now, the Home Office has said that military sites are being considered because they want to reduce the impact on communities and deliver better outcomes for taxpayers.
It comes as there are reports this morning that suggest that Home Secretary Shaban Mahmood is set to announce a huge shake-up of the immigration system based on Denmark's rules. Well, joining us now is GB News national reporter Jack Carson, who's on the ground in Crowborough. Jack, can you give us a sense of what's going on in Crowborough now?
Well, thank you both. Well, I'd say now over 1,000 people, maybe even 1,500 people have come here today to Crowborough to protest the decision by the Home Office to move asylum seekers into the training camp. We just take a little look, you know, just some of the numbers. We've just marched all the way through Crowborough from the training camp onto this village green here, where we're now all standing. You can see some of the signs here: protect our community and protect our family. Stop 600 illegal immigrants coming to Crowborough. The plans from the Home Office is to move around 90 in a day from the end of November. Let's get some feeling from the community then, shall we, with Mark Scott. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Nice to see you.
Why are you here today?
Because I think this is where you see people that are being ignored, local communities being ignored, and they are completely in their rights to be concerned what's coming to the town. And I just feel that unsolicited, you know, undocumented men that are going to be sort of thrust upon them, they already have some sort of history with them anyway. And this is where what you can see, people just don't want this in their town, and rightly so. It's all about safety, nothing to do with anything else. It's purely about safety for families, women, children, and the local community.
So safety is that thing?
Is the key point. I've seen so much now, you know, and it's literally generated around the country that, you know, the elites don't listen to the local people, don't listen to the community, and this is the problem. And now, for once, you can see demographically, it's everyone from every age group. This is kids, there's families, everybody's here because they need to get their voices heard. It's really bad when the Home Office and nobody consults, and the elites just keep pushing this narrative, keep pushing this through, and it's actually crumbling a lot of, you know, natural sort of towns, and they're worried, they're scared.
The Prime Minister says that he's determined to end the use of asylum hotels, that by using disused training camps, army bases around the country, that is a way to provide a better deal for communities where the asylum hotels have been placed, better a deal for the taxpayer. Is he not right in that?
Not really. You know, the thing is, what's he going to do next? It's going to go to HMOs. The thing is, they've got to stop the boats, really. I mean, someone's got to be brave enough to go, this can't go on. And they've got some big decisions to make, because this cannot go on. It's growing and growing and growing. The silent majority have had enough. And I think now people are standing up and getting counted now. They've been knocked down, being called all sorts of names, all sorts of negative feedback that's come through. But you can't, you can see it for your own self. People have had enough. And the community as small as this, putting 600 undocumented males in there, is a very big safety issue for the whole community.
Right, Mark Scott, local resident, thank you so much for joining us and, of course, giving us those thoughts and feelings. You can see all around from the signs people have brought, there's a real strong sense that they are worried just about the impact here, Charlie and Olivia, about what would happen if those asylum seekers were going to be placed in that training camp.
All right, Jack Carson, thank you very much for that. And you've just heard that man there speaking to Jack, saying what they need to do is stop the boats. Well, we'll have a breaking line on that front in just a few moments from our Home and Security editor, Mark White, as there are some small boats crossing this morning.
Well, a spokesperson for the Home Office said, "We are furious at the level of illegal migrants and asylum hotels. This government will close every asylum hotel. Work is well underway, with more suitable sites being brought forward to ease pressure on communities."
We are working closely with local authorities, property partners and across government so that we can accelerate delivery. Well, still to come here on Saturday Morning Live, we'll be joined by a former Special Forces officer, Howard Leedham, who is part of the first group to retake the route that Lawrence of Arabia crossed in the desert.
But next is Rachel Reeves coming for all our retirement savings. Rumours are swirling around the budget. We'll discuss that next and much more. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Bold.
They are under no illusion.
Brave.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live, and it's time now for the Great British Giveaway. And if you're starting to feel festive on November the 8th, and you want to have Christmas on us this year, then good news, because we've got 40 grand to spend on the Christmas of your dreams and £1,000 to spend on your Christmas lunch from your favourite supermarket. Some lunch, that'll be. And a GB News festive goodie bag.
And the best news, you'll get it all in time for the big day. Sound good? Well, here are all the details for a chance to make it yours.
We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year. There's £30,000 in tax-free cash to make 2026 the best year yet. A further £10,000 cash to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £1,000 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. And we'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Now, to look through the top stories of today, we're delighted to be joined by Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, Henry Hill, and journalist and broadcaster Judita De Silva. Now, Henry, I'm going to start with you just because you are right here.
Good reasons, Annie.
Very good reason. Rachel Reeves is planning another tax raid by the sounds of it, and she's going to be raiding people's pension pots. Can you tell us a little bit more about this? Because it sounds as though the government have been encouraging people for a very long time to put money in their pension pots to save for retirement so they're not reliant on the state. And now she seems to be punishing them for doing just that.
Yeah, well, the problem with that is that that's a very sensible plan for making things well in the future. But Rachel Reeves needs money now. So effectively, currently there is no limit on the amount that you, as an employee, can pay into a pension. If you pay some of your salary as salary sacrifice into a pension, it's tax exempt, right? It's taken out before you pay income tax or national insurance. Crucially, employer contributions are the same. This encourages people to save for retirement. Rachel Reeves is apparently proposing, or at least considering, bringing in a cap of a couple of £1,000s a year on how much you can pay into your pension, which will obviously have the effect of, one, hitting hardest the businesses that offer the most generous pension schemes, and two, disincentivising people from saving.
Judith, we're in the Times, this story, this report on the pensions, and there's a statement from the Society of the Pension Professionals Tax Group saying that many employers would now be forced to make their pension schemes less generous as a consequence of this measure.
I mean, I can't deny that I do find it problematic because, again, I do agree that if things were better, it is feasible that you could go after pensions. But when you're coming off the back of... It speaks to the desperation of Rachel Reeves and the economic state where she's got to find money from somewhere. And again, when people level a lot of vehement condemnation at the government, I'm curious as to know what you would do instead.
Well, cut welfare spending instead of crying on the front bench, perhaps?
They've now got a situation where it's a borderline coup happening with your backbenchers because Labour cannot be a government that goes after the poor, which is the perception that comes from trying to revolutionise welfare. So you're now in a situation that, OK, people who earn more and can save more towards the future, can we take some of that? I do think that it is a poor choice. And I think that the welfare stuff Labour should have gotten behind it because the woman has to find the money from somewhere. If you say no to everything, what should be done?
Yeah. It does feel as though Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer have sort of been neutered by their own backbenchers. They have this enormous majority, and yet, as Judita was saying there, they're not really able to do anything that they want to do. They tried to cut welfare, they tried to cut winter fuel payments. They weren't able to do it. And so now they're doing really unpopular things like stopping people putting money into their pension pots. And I'm right in thinking, Henry, that I think that this isn't instead of raising income tax. This raid on pension pots will be as well as raising income tax for the first time in 50 years.
Can anything be salvaged from this budget? Is there anything we're going to want to hear?
I mean, no. And it's going to be the same for every budget going forward. I mean, of course, it's on top of the income tax. The income tax that we think is going to come in the budget, forecast to raise £6 billion. She's trying to close a £30 billion hole in her figures. So there's going to be this and much more. The obvious cut, I think, in principle, would be to make some adjustment to the triple lock, to stop making these payments to wealthy people who don't depend on the state pension, in order to allow people to save so that future people aren't dependent on the state pension. But instead, we are squeezing current savers, working age people, to prop up current revenue spending.
It's weak government, perhaps. That's what critics will say of the Labour front bench, because they couldn't get through those welfare cuts. And we're hearing now, obviously, that the whip has been restored to those Labour MP rebels who were fighting against those welfare reforms. Juditha, when you hear about the sort of state that the Labour Party is in now, according to its critics, that they're backing down on the tough measures that they were trying to commit to, do you have confidence that they are going to be able to bring down this deficit and the concerns about the financial black hole?
I mean, I don't have confidence that they can, because they're warring internally. But then I do urge caution to the Labour Party that just take a look at what the Tories are going to. You are careening down exactly the same path. Because I think that when there is crisis, everybody kind of falls victim to that desire that I see an opening to seize power for myself, as long as I say the right thing, which then speaks to the attraction of an era of populism, where you speak to the discontent of people. And if you say it in an attractive way, you get support. But when it comes to practicality, just look at reform. The minute you kick the tires on their actual policies, how will you fund it? Where will the money come from?
OK, Juditha and Henry, just stay with us for a moment, because we have some breaking news for you now, because 1,500 small boat migrants have crossed the Channel illegally since Thursday, GB News can reveal. And our Home and Security editor, Mark White, is available for us now to share more details. Mark, what can you tell us?
Well, the third straight day, we are seeing more migrant activity in the Channel, and it should come as no surprise to those who are regular watchers of what happens in the English Channel. We've had a fortnight of really quite appalling weather in the Channel, which has meant that the people smuggling gangs have not been able to push these small boats into the water. But the second that the conditions improve in the Channel, that's exactly what happens. All the more bizarre then that we've had a number of ministers during the end of that fortnight coming forward and saying the fact we haven't had so many crossings for such a long period of time shows that government policy is making an impact. I've been talking to a senior maritime source this morning who says absolutely nothing of the kind. This is all to do with the weather, and proved clearly by the fact that we are just seeing a short window of a few days of passable conditions, and they're pushing them out in very significant numbers, Charlie. On Thursday, 621 migrants crossed in 9 small boats. By yesterday, the end of yesterday, that had increased to 1,269 after another 648 crossed in 9 small boats. And today already into Dover Harbour, 240 have crossed in 3 small boats. Another 2 vessels are out in the water. The conditions are going to remain passable for today and even into tomorrow, where we could see significant numbers crossing again tomorrow.
Next to you in the office yesterday, you were having a bit of a battle with the Home Office press office about the latest figures that you were bringing to our audience here on GB News. This will be very unwelcome news for the Home Office as this latest set of crossings comes today.
Yes, indeed. I mean, I found it remarkable that the press officer I was speaking to couldn't quite get it into their head. Though, if you talk about a 24-hour period, it doesn't necessarily need to be one day. It can be, the morning of Thursday into the morning of Friday, which is what we were talking about in saying yesterday that 1,000 had crossed in that 24-hour period. And of course, as we know, it was 1,269 by the end of Friday anyway, and has gone up now to 1,500 and may well be at 1,600 or more by the end of today, 2,000 by the end of tomorrow. Listen, what that's doing to the figure, it's taking it well beyond now 38,000. I think 38,400 odd, which is well beyond the 36,816 who crossed during the whole of last year. We've still got most of the month of November and the whole of December to go. And even though conditions are very unpredictable at this time of year, more bad days than good, look what happens when we get the good days.
Very much, Mark White. And we've still got Henry and Judita here in the studio. So just very quickly from you, Henry, what do you make of this? The government was obviously hoping that their strategy was working. Migrants hadn't come across for a few days, but now we have 1,500 since Thursday.
I mean, I genuinely am very seldom surprised if you cover this all the time. But when you said 1,500 and I saw it was since Thursday, I did a double take. That's how extraordinary it is. The government strategy, even allowing for the fact that these things take time, clearly not working.
And Judith, obviously, we're hearing from the Home Secretary, Shabal Mahmood, taking inspiration from Denmark. Home Office officials sent there in the last month to learn about their policies. Frankly, issues about inclusion, integration and having family members join you aren't really going to matter if we can't even deal with this.
I think the important thing here, what struck me the most, is when he started saying the numbers that over 600 in 3 or so boats. When you're battling that level of human desperation where you're effectively saying, I'm willing to die, because that seems like a death trap, the Labour Party has to recognise that whether you go from the left tends to lead from a humanity perspective. If there is care and concern on both sides of the pond, there's a desperation that you're battling that requires an action that is more severe.
Okay. Thank you very much, Judita and Henry, and lots more to come on the show. But first, let's get the headlines with Sophia Wenslow.
Good morning. Your headlines at 11:36. Donald Trump's White House has attacked the fake news BBC, accusing the corporation of purposeful dishonesty over the way a Panorama documentary selectively edited a speech made by the president. GB News can reveal that 1,500 small boat migrants have now crossed the channel illegally since Thursday, taking the total number of channel migrant arrivals to 38,450. Labour MPs are plotting to oust Sir Keir Starmer, it's being reported, as their anger grows about Number 10 and their plan to raise income tax. The NHS has spent at least £1.4 billion of taxpayers' money on net zero schemes without reducing its carbon footprint at all. That's according to the Telegraph newspaper. It's understood eco-friendly pain relief and electric ambulances failed to cut emissions. And a woman is in a critical condition in Birmingham after she was stabbed in the neck in what police have described as an unprovoked attack. Those are the headlines. More in an hour.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The weekend is finally here. Once the fog clears away this morning, it'll allow plenty of sunny spells to develop across the country. Feeling a little cooler than it did yesterday, but temperatures still above average for the time of year. Mostly dry, settled conditions, all thanks to a ridge of high pressure, but low pressure is never too far away, eventually bringing in some rain later. But for most, this afternoon in particular, there'll be plenty of sunshine. We can't rule out some showers, particularly around Wales, southwest England, and a fair amount of cloud across Scotland. This producing some drizzle at times, but feeling pleasant in the light winds, highs reaching around 15 degrees Celsius. Then through into this evening, still cloudy for a time across Scotland, but only rain and drizzle eventually pushing its way northwards, drifting into northern Scotland, through into the Northern Isles into the course of the evening, turning clearer for a time, but I'm afraid soon being replaced by further cloud and outbreaks of rain, these at first pushing into parts of Northern Ireland. Plenty of clear skies across northern England, central parts and south and southeastern areas of England, but still some showers just starting to push into western Wales and parts of southwest England. These should be mostly isolated, so remaining dry for many areas, but further spells of rain pushing into parts of Northern Ireland, western areas of Scotland. This could turn quite heavy through the early hours of the morning, and some quite strong winds associated with this rain as well. But across the south and southeast remaining mostly dry, plenty of clear skies, so it's likely we'll see some mist and fog once again by the time we reach the morning, and still feeling a little chilly through the early hours as well. But I'm afraid Sunday won't be quite as settled. Cloud outbreaks of rain pushing in from the west. This could turn heavy across Wales and southwest England, turning a little brighter across Northern Ireland later, and still plenty of bright and sunny spells across East Anglia and southeast England. Still pleasant in the sunshine, highs reaching 15 degrees.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Well, welcome back. And our next guest completed a remarkable feat earlier this year as part of the first group to trek the same route as Lawrence of Arabia.
A former Special Forces officer, Howard Leedham, followed in Lawrence's footsteps across Saudi Arabia and Jordan in a 25-day journey. And I'm very happy to say he joins us now. Howard, thank you very much for coming to see us.
Thank you for having me on.
Now, talk us about what you're putting on, having completed that remarkable trek.
Well, we did the trek in January and February, and I was odd enough to lead a team of Special Forces Club members to do the entire route that Lawrence did in 1917. 685 miles, 1,100 kilometres, took us 25 days. We started off with 5 riders, 4 riders made it, and the last 9 days we spent in Jordan. And one of the things that in Saudi, we would basically follow Lawrence's route from water to water and go to the same wells that he had gone, because that's what they had to do as they worked their way around the Nefed Desert. And then, obviously, when they came in towards Aqaba, because the guns in Aqaba all faced towards the sea, yeah. so they had to cross the uncrossable desert to get into the back of Aqaba. And when you come into Jordan, what strikes you is, because of the topography and because of the way that the history is so well recorded in that area, is that you can basically follow almost a precise route that he followed, and basically sleep in the same places that he slept, so you can really feel what they were doing and how they tactically moved down in order to take the port of Aqaba. And so the last 9 days was spent doing that. We would cover 50 to 60 kilometres a day. I need to say that we did it in aid of the Special Forces Club Benevolent Fund, and we raised, I think, over £700,000 to help us support Special Forces veterans.
And you're now putting on a different effort.
Yes. Now, what's happened is that His Majesty King Abdullah and the Jordan Heritage Revival Company, which is run by one of King Abdullah's funds, they wanted to open this up to tourists, adventure tourists, and so they asked for assistance of how to set it up and how to do it to get through the Jordan part of the route. So next year there's going to be five treks for tourists, but instead of having to do 50 kilometres a day, we'll do 20 kilometres a day, and we'll leapfrog forward. So there'll be 50 tourists that will be allowed to do that next year.
And if you're watching on your televisions, I mean, some amazing pictures from this trek. 50 kilometres a day, it's absolutely remarkable. A lot more than a marathon you're doing there. And can you tell us a bit about the conditions that you're walking in?
When we did it, it was January. So the altitude there is probably about 1,500 metres to 1,800 metres above sea level. So we would get a little bit of warmth during the day, but at night in the desert, we went down to -5. Oh. And I think there was one night when the water would actually froze in our tent. But the ground underfoot changes constantly. You've got sort of volcanic desert that you have to cross, and then as you go towards the Hijaz Mountains, you have to cross the Hijaz Mountains, which is spectacular, and then you climb up to 1,800 metres, and then we enter into Wadi Rum by the very same cobbled zigzag path that Lawrence writes about in Seven Pillars of Wisdom.
You must have felt the weight of history on you as you were redoing this trek, Howard, but following an extensive career in UK Special Forces, how did this trek compare to some of the challenges that you faced in your career? And do you think that tourists are going to be up to recreating what you achieved?
Well, it was a test of endurance, and all the Special Forces regiments were represented in the riding team, and yes, that is. It is a tough call.
It's tough,
but
I think you're putting it mildly.
But what we've done for what we're doing for the tourists, it'll be more like glamping than camping. So we'll have sanitation online. We'll have and they'll only ride 20 kilometres a day, and then be put in 4x4s, and then leapfrog forward to the next camp or the next location, and then the camels will be brought forward the next day, and then they'll ride another 20. So it'll be a lot gentler. The other thing as well is that they'll do, in the first 4 days, they'll do camel rider training in Wadi Rum, which is beautiful.
Well, thank you so much, Howard, and how incredible. I definitely prefer the idea of glamping to what Howard put himself through.
And crucially, when you finish the trek to Aqaba, you won't have to fight to retake the port city as well.
There you go.
Thank you very much, Howard Leedham.
Thank you.
Well, still to come here on Saturday Morning Live, we'll be learning about a West Yorkshire church being draped with 26 metres of handmade poppies in a moving remembrance display.
Yes, we'll learn more. We'll listen to Anna Riley on that story very soon.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Heavy thundery rain is heading towards parts of Spain and Portugal as we go into next week. But before that, the heavy thundery downpours across the Balearics through today, now heading eastwards across into parts of the central Med and going to affect Italy as we go through tomorrow, could cause some impacts. Further west, turning drier, albeit across western parts of Portugal and Spain. A front is going to be moving in, and this could bring some downpours as we go through next week. Otherwise, a lot of dry weather for many.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace to
Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The Royal British Legion is launching the Poppy Appeal to raise funds to support the armed forces community.
Well, the launch will be held at Frameless, where veterans supported by the RBL will share their stories amid a spectacular, immersive poppy landscape projection.
Well, the appeal will encourage the nation to wear a poppy to send a personal message of thanks to those who serve.
Well, let's talk to our national reporter, Will Godley.
And this is all part of the Royal British Legion's fundraising, this poppy appeal happening from now until Armistice Day on, of course, 11th of November, raising money for the armed forces community. They're hoping to raise £50 million to support some 7,000 veterans, family members and armed forces. And when you were in Afghanistan, that's when your military career came to an unexpected end, wasn't it? What happened there?
So I was the point man in a foot patrol, and unfortunately I was involved in an explosion which subsequently took my hearing from my left ear, and due to that I was forced to leave the army for medical reasons.
And since then, Jason, you've been supported by the Royal British Legion. What kind of support have they offered for you?
Well, it's a vast array of support, really. It can be financial, you know, mental health. They can signpost you for different various charities and support that, you know, as veterans that we really essentially do need, you know, to rebuild our lives and get to a better point, you know, and be positive in our lives and know that we've got that hand on our shoulder when it's needed.
And I can hear you sounding a little bit emotional talking about it. What kind of a difference has that made, that support, on your life?
Oh, it's massive, you know, you can't really... It's not something you can put into words.
GB News, the People's Channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live. And thousands of handmade poppies on 26 metres of netting have been hung from a church in a West Yorkshire town. Our reporter Anna Riley joined one of the knitting sessions.
Knitting poppies for Remembrance. This chat and knit group in Sherburn in Elmet have created a special display ready for the Sunday service at All Saints Church. The tower has been adorned with thousands of poppies individually sewn into 26 metres of netting.
The next stage, once you've got 10,000 poppies, is you've got to put them onto something. And so that's been the major thing that we've been doing. And this is just the last bit, really. And this one, I think, is going to go inside. People do notice it, because with the church being on the hill, you can see it from around the village.
The display is a mark of respect for the fallen and to all those who have served.
I served in Northern Ireland, and I was an army welfare officer, so I had to look after the families of soldiers who had been murdered by the IRA, and people who had died in accidents and whatnot, and it was a very trying job. And it's just so important to remember all of the people who have lost their lives or have been injured as a result of war. And unfortunately, it's not getting, you know, the history now, it's not getting any better, but it is very important to remember what they suffered in the two big wars. And, you know, it's just important that we keep remembering it.
The Chat and Knit Club also crochet blankets and shawls to donate to local charities. For the members, it's a support group as well as a way to aid the community.
Well, you're not knitting on your own, but you have your friends you've made, and really sort of just a good chat, solve problems, help one another through crises, help one another through difficult times as well as good times.
Well, look at them, you can see, can't you? They're such lovely company, aren't they? What can I say? They're just nice ladies, and they make you feel welcome.
The church poppy cascade can be seen for miles, with each and every one symbolising a life lost in conflict. Anna Riley, GB News.
Well, thank you, Anna, for that really quite moving and beautiful report, and great to see also the Commonwealth War Graves Commission there, its work, because you go around Europe, go around Britain, you'll see, you go into a cemetery and there'll be one grave in that cemetery, in that graveyard, which is perfectly cleaned, perfectly prepared, and undoubtedly it's a veteran being supported by the War Graves Commission. I think they do sensational work.
Yeah. And I love these quite imaginative ideas that people are coming up with this Remembrance. We had people selling poppies on the train, we have people knitting poppies. I think that's so important when the generation of veterans is finally now dying out, that we find new ways to remember them. So thank you so much, Anna, for that package. And thank you too for everyone watching at home. We'll be back at the same time next week.
But up next, we've got Dawn Neeson, because she's here with The Weekend for 3 hours. Dawn, what's coming up on your show?
Thank you very much, you two. A brilliant show, as always. We have got another amazing show coming up for you on GB News. Astonishing BBC story continues. And we're going to move it on. We're going to ask now, could Trump actually take legal action against the BBC? Also talking to the Crowborough residents about those 500 illegal migrants in their backyards, and why young folk have completely given up on work. Oh, and of course, it being a Saturday, it being me, we're also talking about booze and why it's actually good for you. What's not to like? All of that coming up after the weather. I'll see you soon.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. The weekend is finally here. Once the fog clears away this morning, it'll allow plenty of sunny spells to develop across the country. Feeling a little cooler than it did yesterday, but temperatures still above average for the time of year. Mostly dry, settled conditions, all thanks to a ridge of high pressure, but low pressure is never too far away, eventually bringing in some rain later. But for most, this afternoon in particular, there'll be plenty of sunshine. We can't rule out some showers, particularly around Wales, southwest England, and a fair amount of cloud across Scotland. This producing some drizzle at times, but feeling pleasant in the light winds, highs reaching around 15 degrees Celsius. Then through into this evening, still cloudy for a time across Scotland, but any rain and drizzle eventually pushing its way northwards, drifting into northern Scotland, through into the Northern Isles into the course of the evening, turning clearer for a time, but I'm afraid soon being replaced by further cloud and outbreaks of rain, these at first pushing into parts of Northern Ireland. Plenty of clear skies across northern England, central parts and south and southeastern areas of England, but still some showers just starting to push into western Wales and parts of southwest England. These should be mostly isolated, so remaining dry for many areas, but further spells of rain pushing into parts of Northern Ireland, western areas of Scotland. This could turn quite heavy through the early hours of the morning, and some quite strong winds associated with this rain as well. But across the south and southeast, remaining mostly dry, plenty of clear skies, so it's likely we'll see some mist and fog once again by the time we reach the morning, and still feeling a little chilly through the early hours as well. But I'm afraid Sunday won't be quite as settled. Cloud outbreaks of rain pushing in from the west. This could turn heavy across Wales and southwest England, turning a little brighter across Northern Ireland later, and still plenty of bright and sunny spells across East Anglia and southeast England. Still pleasant in the sunshine, highs reaching 15 degrees.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year. There's £30,000 in tax-free cash to make 2026 the best year yet. A further £10,000 cash to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £1,000 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. And we'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping